Welcome back to the Nick Bartlett Show, everybody. The football show where a former bench warmer basketball player breaks down some college football. So we're still in the midst here of interviewing media and other personnel from Super West teams in regards to their non-conference games. And for today's show, we're going to be breaking down the Cal-Auburn matchup. So helping me on the show today is Cole Pinkston of On3 Sports and AuburnLive On3. Thank you for coming on the show, Cole.
Yeah, man, absolutely. No problem.
Awesome. And today it's an important little matchup. I know it may not be the biggest game on the college slate, but it's seriously an important little matchup. We got two teams who both need to get their season off on the right hand here. And hey, maybe Cal's crowd actually shows up for a game. So I'm gonna get the questions down to Cole here, and just getting us started. How is the feel of Auburn's program changed since the hiring of Hugh Freeze?
Man, there's a lot of energy since he's been hired. I think, energy was at an all-time low as far as I've covered Auburn, which is all my life, with Brian Harsin. They made the coaching change there. Hugh Freeze brought a lot of energy with the recruiting. He's done really good with that. He got 22 players from the transfer portal, and all guys that were starters or key rotational guys other places. So I think they're going to be revamped as far as the team goes. Do they have enough to compete in the SEC? I'm not sure. That's where that's the line they're trying to meet right now as far as talent on the roster. But I think, they got some really nice pieces. They got Peyton Thorne, who's a quarterback from Michigan State, and he's going to play. He's going to be the starter. They've already named that. So I like some of the pieces. I'm not sure what to think about the team as a whole yet, but I think they're going to be much better than a year ago.
Definitely. I mean, I know last year's expectations, we can say Auburn didn't live up to expectations, or at least their kind of normal expectations last year. But so you touched on Hugh Freeze, touched on Peyton Thorne. Looking at the offensive line, I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast. I heard one of your local guys say that actually having these three transfer in is a good thing. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, definitely. Gunnar Britton, Dylan Wade, Avery Jones, they'll be your left and right tackles and your centers. So those are three new guys to the program. They were all starters where they were at. Gunnar Britton comes from Western Kentucky, Dylan Wade from Tulsa, and then Avery Jones from ECU. So those guys were pretty good where they came from. It's a different ballgame in the SEC, of course, but from what we understand, they've transitioned really well, and they're all going to be starters. So that's the offensive line was the main area that I thought needed revamping, and it looks like they did a pretty good job of that.
Definitely, and especially in a conference like the SEC, if you don't have an offensive line, you're in a really rough spot, and that's saying that nicely. Right. So I know there was some kind of Twitter blah blah blah. I'm not getting into that with Jarquez Hunter. Do you feel that he's the real deal? I think he might be able to be kind of sneaky good this year.
Yeah, man, he's good. Tank Bigsby, you probably heard of him. He's with the Jacksonville Jaguars now. He kind of got all the buzz for Auburn in the last couple of years, but Jarquez Hunter honestly outshined him a few times a year ago, and had moments where he was the running back they went with in the fourth quarter. He was the guy that sort of made these big plays. So now he's taken over as the first running back, number one guy, and I think the sky's the limit for him, man. He could be really good.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have known that. That may be the reason we do these things a little bit here. Didn't really realize he kind of outshined the star last year. So hopping down here, I'm thinking I'm just gonna kind of group them together here. It looks like the transfer tight end Rivaldo Fairweather, he could be the biggest threat, but there's also a couple returning receivers. You got Javarius Johnson, who averaged almost 20 yards per catch. Coy Moore. Do you expect kind of more out of the returning receivers or the transfers, or is just the tight end just the main option? I threw a lot of that at you there.
I think the receiver position for Auburn is probably the least proven position on the team, because you have a couple guys like you named there. Rivaldo Fairweather's new; he just transferred in. Really, Javarius Johnson, the one you named, is the only one that returns with some pretty good production. After that, it's all transfers and new guys. So That's a position we think could be talented, but we don't know much about him yet. Shane Hooks is another guy. He transferred from Jackson State, Deion Sanders' program over there. Um, he's been getting a lot of buzz. Jair Shorter was the number one player in the country as far as yards per reception in the NCAA last year. He is now with Auburn from North Texas. There's some interesting pieces there. I don't fully know what to think about that position group. That's kind of the thing with this whole Auburn team is they're so new. Almost half the roster is new, and it's like, well, we know what they did at other places. We don't know what they're going to be at Auburn quite yet. But the receiver, that's to me that is the position that's going to have to prove it the most this season because we just don't know anything about it.
Definitely, and as you touched on with the loss of Tank Bigsby to the Jacksonville Jaguars, there's going to have to be production replaced at some level.
Right.
So looking at the offense, is there anything I missed here? Anything else you'd like to add on the offense?
Um, probably just Peyton Thorne. I think he's now the starting quarterback that was named last week, and he just transferred in from Michigan State where he threw for over 6,000 yards in his career over there. Had a bunch of picks. I think 24 picks in his 3-year career there, but that Auburn's quarterback play has been a real problem the last couple of years. TJ Finley, Robbie Ashford, guys that weren't quite up to par as far as quarterback play goes. So he's been pretty solid in his career. Nothing crazy. And he's not a big time game changer, I wouldn't say, but he's a solid quarterback prospect. I'm interested to see Hugh Freeze's offense married up with his style. I think it could be good. Hugh Freeze is always pretty good with quarterbacks. He's got a good track record there. So that is something that I'm really interested in. I like Peyton Thorne. I like his film from Michigan State too.
Yeah, definitely. And was he the starter last year? I'm not sure off the top of my head, but Michigan State was really good 2 years ago. And if he was the starter of that team, I mean, that's some serious experience. Even if he was a
Yeah,
backup on that team. So,
he was.
hop-
He was the starter in 2021 when they had Kenneth Walker, who's now with the Seahawks. He was the starter that year, and then 2022 he was a starter as well.
yeah, I thought it was a little something like that. And with Kenneth Walker, my dad's the biggest Seahawks fan in the world. I could talk
Oh,
for a
really?
while here, so I'm gonna keep moving forward. But yeah,
Nice, nice.
know a little bit about him. Hopping over the defense here. Outside of Justin Rogers, do the Tigers have anyone else who can make impact on their defensive line? I know you got Mosiah Nasili Kite and Jalen McLeod or a couple other names.
Yeah, those three are all again 3 transfers. All three of those guys are. I think they're going to be pretty good. Marcus Harris is a guy who's been starting for the last 3 years for Auburn on the defensive line. He's pretty good. Jason Jones actually transferred from Oregon 2 years ago, a year ago. He's originally from Alabama. He went to Oregon out of high school. Now he's back with Auburn. He's pretty good as well. He's had a good spring. He's a big guy, like 6'7", 320 pounds, playing inside defensive line. So that they have a couple guys that are interesting. I think defensive line is going to be pretty good. Those transfers they got that you mentioned, I think are very big improvements on that defensive line.
Definitely. And we haven't touched on Cal too much. I mean, Cal's probably not the best team, but the little bit we do know about Cal this year is their offensive line returns a lot. But it's kind of the opposite of Auburn. That's not necessarily a good thing. They allowed 31 sacks last year, and they ranked 122nd in the nation in rushing yards per game. So I know people are hyped on Jade Knott. He's like a second team All Pac-12 running back in the preseason, but they ranked 122nd in the nation in rushing yards per game last year, returned the same offensive lineman, and lost probably their best quarterback in a decade. I don't see how Cal's improved. That's me. Sorry if that may offend some Golden Bear fans. You guys, your defense is always a little bit tough, a little bit good, but it's kind of tough this year. I don't know a lot. Hopping back to Auburn here, though, I don't know a lot about the linebacking core. That was the one group that I kind of struggled to find some names in my research. I saw Cam Riley back in the middle with 66 stops last year. Any other guys, returners or transfers who stand out to you there?
Yeah, you got Cam Riley. Wesley Steiner is a guy who was played a lot last year. They lost Owen Papo to the NFL. He was a guy that played and started for a long time. So really rebuilding there. I mean that and receiver. We mentioned receivers earlier. Those are the two positions that I think are rebuilding the most right now for Auburn. So they did get a transfer from North Texas, Larry Nixon, a guy who had over 100 tackles for them last year. So he's interesting. beyond that, they have a North Carolina transfer, Eugene Asante. We've heard good things about, but it's sort of a carousel there. Austin Keys, that's going to be the starter at linebacker. He is a transfer from Ole Miss. So again, it's just a bunch of transfers, but he was very good at Ole Miss. He solidified himself as a starter. Cam Riley's probably going to be that other guy, but nobody's really solidified that spot next to Keys. So that's a question mark for Auburn, no doubt.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And all right, so hopping over to what I think most people would agree is Auburn's strength this year. You got cornerbacks Nehemiah Pritchett and DJ James. You also it's something like you return essentially everyone in your secondary. How good is this unit going to be?
They should be as far as the starters, maybe not as far as depth goes, but the starters, the four starting guys, there's not a more experienced position group on the team than corner and safety, the secondary. Nehemiah Pritchett has started for Auburn for almost 4 years now. This will be his fourth. DJ James, another transfer from Oregon, by the way. He's been fantastic. Um, in my opinion, DJ James is one of the best corners in the country. I think he's a early round guy, and I also feel that way about Keontae Scott, who's playing nickel, who is from California. He is from Helix. Does that sound familiar?
No, I'm a little bit more northwest, and honestly, man, California is so big that I couldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, yeah.
What about Snow College? Have you heard of Snow College?
Is that in Utah or is that
Yes.
in California? Yeah,
In
if it's in you, yeah, I actually had a. Okay, this is going off topic, but now it has to be brought up. I had a buddy in high school who wanted to be a long snapper, and he was really good. But he stopped at the last moment. He started making a little bit of money, but yeah, for
Yeah.
Snow College.
Okay. Well, that's where Keontae Scott came from. He played his junior college ball there, transferred to Auburn. He was the number one corner in the country in junior college. And now I think, man, I really think he's the best player on the team. He's one of the best players on the team. So if you haven't heard that name, I think that's one you should probably track because he's pretty good. I think he's an NFL guy. And then Zion Puckett is a guy who started at safety for Auburn for 3 years now.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was a nice little Snow College adventure too. Wasn't expecting
Yeah.
that. I haven't heard that name in about 10 years. So yeah, pretty much getting kind of our closing questions here. Anything else you want to add about the defense, Auburn football in general, or honestly the college football landscape because we're in such a weird time, really?
Yeah, well, it speaks a lot to all these transfers Auburn's going to have playing for them this year. Um, Now, the defense, I would actually say I have a little bit more confidence in the offense than the defense right now for Auburn. And the reason for that is because I think they reloaded pretty good on offense. They have some playmakers. I think they have a pretty good quarterback now, and they have an offensive coach in Hugh Freeze. He's pretty much known for his offense. Um, Defense, I would say if I had a concern, there's some concerns there. I think the defensive front's going to be new for a little while. I think the linebackers are suspect to some extent. And then obviously your secondary is really good, but the front seven is where I worry about a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate the honesty. So I guess is it too early for you to do a light game prediction? Are you feeling comfortable at this point?
Sure, yeah, I can definitely do that. I don't know much about California. I know I know that Aaron Rodgers played quarterback there. I know that Jared Goff played there. Uh, Javon Best. Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
actually, yeah.
Deshaun
Uh,
Jackson.
yep.
Yep. So that's really, I mean, that's my extent of California Golden Bear football. But um, I kind of looked through their recruiting classes over the past year. They've had to hit the portal a lot too, right? Have they hit the portal a good bit?
Yeah, they've hit the portal a little bit, but really the main thing for them is they lost their starting quarterback. Their defense, which has historically been good under Wilcox, was pretty bad last year. And what I think the biggest piece is they had like a legit receiver who could have played in most conferences, Michael Sturdivant, and he transferred to UCLA. So I like a lot of people seem to be hyped on Cal. I'm reading all these media things. For me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but there could be something I'm missing here. So
I got you. Well, the more I study California, the more. Here's the thing, and I think a lot of Auburn fans would agree with me, is that is sort of unfamiliar territory for Auburn. Going to California, sort of being, later at night. I guess it will be for Auburn because we're on Central Time here and it's Pacific time there, so it's going to be different, right? It's going to be late for us down here. It's going to be like 8 or 9 o'clock when the game gets going. So that's interesting. Certainly plays a strange factor in it for Auburn, I would say. And I've never seen Auburn play California in my lifetime. I don't know if they have. So it's just unfamiliar, right? I don't know if Auburn's ever played in California Stadium. I don't know what their atmosphere is like at California. What would you say?
I'm trying to keep friends here. It could be improved dramatically.
Yeah,
That's probably a little bit of a nice way. It's Stanford and Cal are just those teams, and like you touched on, all love. What's fair is fair. I mean, there was a point when they had Aaron Rodgers and Marshawn Lynch on the same team. That place used to sell out and be
yeah,
crazy, sell out and be crazy. But in the last 5 years, man, it, it, it's weak, man. I'm not gonna waste time. It's a pretty weak environment in general. But
gotcha.
I'm hoping, since it's an SEC team, and I know you guys are in a little bit of a down year, which probably hurts you guys a little bit. But I'm hoping the brand name Auburn and the SEC team draws some fans out, because if that won't do it, not much else will.
Yeah, and Auburn's coming off of a pretty rough year, so maybe California fans look at that as, hey, maybe this is one we could slip up and win, against an SEC school. I wouldn't blame them for that because again, it's a strange game, and Auburn's rebuilding. Brand new coach, a lot of brand new players. Not really sure what to expect. I guess if I had to make a prediction, though, I'd probably. I mean, I think Auburn's going to win the game. I think Auburn's going to win it by a touchdown or two. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means, just because of everything that I mentioned and the factors that are sort of different to Auburn. I do know this. We have 6,000 subscribers that are Auburn fans, and a lot of people have been talking about that game. A lot of people are wanting to get up to California and be there for that game. So I think you're going to see a pretty good influx of Auburn fans there, which will be interesting. So that should help out a little bit. You'll have a little bit of a crowd there if you're Auburn, maybe. And Auburn usually travels well too, so that helps them. I'd say Auburn wins maybe if I had to give a score 35-21. That'll be my prediction.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm thinking probably something similar along the lines. I just don't see Cal's offense being strong enough. I know they did get a transfer quarterback who is pretty good on his feet. I think it's Sam Jackson. I could be wrong with the name off the top of my head, but I believe he used to play for TCU and he's could be kind of explosive. But I just don't see Cal having enough on offense with the loss of Sturdivant, a line that was terrible last year in both facets. So I'm thinking they lose, like, I don't know, it's at home. I'll make it a little closer, like 17. I'll do a random. I'll say like 17-27, something like that.
Okay. Well, that sounds right to me.
And then, all right, two questions here. Kind of always the last to end with. One's pretty simple. One is just kind of random, but it's probably the most me question in the world. Yeah. So the first question is: do you have a favorite sport, or heck, hey, even like a favorite activity outside of football, or is it football all the day, all the time?
Well, I work in the media now, but I am a former football player, football coach. I played on the college level. I played on the Division III level, so like really, way down there at a school in Montgomery, Alabama, that y'all would probably never have heard of. Um, so I'm a football guy all the way through, and I coached for a little bit before I got into this career. But I'm a big basketball guy too. I love basketball. Not big on baseball. I played soccer in high school too, so I'm kind of, I can dabble with soccer a little bit. But football is my main sport for sure.
No, yeah, I feel that, man. I mean, that makes sense as a former player. And I mean, if
Yeah.
you didn't catch at the top, I entered this show with I think his new tagline, I had it right out this week, hosted by a former bench warming basketball player. So
Yeah.
I made it to high school, man. You play in D3. I have respect for, I know obviously like the stakes probably, like the crowds aren't as big and there may not be as much money, but the grueling day-to-day activity of studying, working out, practicing, trying to live a social life. That's a balance to be found. And then
Yeah.
the last question I have, always my question, and I was watching some SmackDown last night. Do you have a favorite WWE wrestler as a kid? Did you not watch wrestling as a kid, or even like a favorite wrestler now?
Yeah. So I did watch it as a kid. I always kind of liked. Well, I'm a huge fan of The Rock. Okay. If you follow me on Twitter, I have a specific GIF. It is my GIF. Okay, is The Rock, and it's him going like ooh, That's my favorite gift in the world. Okay, because I'm a huge fan of The Rock. I think he's awesome. I love his movies. I loved him when he was wrestling. So I guess I would go with The Rock.
That's cool. That's cool. That's I've been hearing a lot of Stone Cold Steve Austin's. Obviously you find like
Yeah.
the one or two like people may like wrestling a little bit too much like me to go like deep into history, but that is the first Rock. So that's like the icon of
Yes.
my of probably our generation. I'm guessing we're around a similar age
Yeah.
range. So
Yeah. Definitely.
thank you for coming on the show today, Cole.
Yeah. Absolutely. I appreciate you inviting me, man.
Yeah, of course. And it looks like we're both predicting Auburn winning. We'll call it a close, comfortable victory.
Yeah.
And then I like what you said, Cole. I really do hope that Auburn fans show out to Cal, actually add some life into the atmosphere. And hey, Cal fans, prove me wrong. Really, especially when you're in the midst of conference realignment, it may be a good time to show out and support your team. So this has been the Nick Bartlett Show, and let your energy speak.